Oh man, 80s Week is here at last. The second annual. That's right. We're doing this every year. Probably right around this time of year, we're going to do 80s Week. So we have so much stuff here planned for you. Today, we're talking about all these amazing, but yet underrated 80s guitarists who just deserve so much more credit than what they get. So we're getting ready to dive into all that stuff. And if you guys would, do me a huge favor and check out my brand new course, Essential 80s Licks. We just launched this. We have a huge discount on it for Black Friday. And if you guys want to support 80s Week, support the channel, all that stuff, check out the course if you would. It's got its biggest discount it's going to have on it. And we just dive into 10 different player style on there, and a lot of them are on the list that we're going to talk about today. So check that out if you would, and let's talk about these underrated, absolute monster 80s shredders. Oh, and one more thing. Who do you think should be on this list? This is just my personal list, but I'd be curious to know who you guys think should be on here, because a lot of times you list guitarists that maybe myself or someone else has never heard of, and we get to check out a cool new guitarist who deserves more attention. So please let me know down below in the comments who you think should be on the top 10 list, or just give me your top 10 list. Okay, so let's get our riffs going. Okay, number one, we're starting off with, and these are in no particular order, Jake E. Lee. I think here more recently, Jake has gotten more attention, which is great because he deserves it. But I think, you know, back in the 80s, he probably didn't get the attention he deserved because he is such a just unique, original riff writer. You know, to be in the 80s and write all these riffs, and Jake was doing really like funk, like tuning up, doing all these cool chords and stuff. I mean, Jake was just phenomenal, and he still is phenomenal. Ah yes, I played that riff just like Mick Mars did on a pink Ibanez Steve Vai Jim. That's the only guitar I had tuned down in full step, but I think Mick gets left out on a lot of these lists all the time, and I think he was one of the absolute top riff writers from the 80s. His solos were never quite my thing, but as far as a riff writer and just making the coolest, you know, sound, I mean, like Dr. Feelgood, Livewire, Too Fast for Love, Kickstart My Heart. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and it's just like, man, one guy came up with all of those riffs. That's pretty crazy. So, and his riffs were different. His wasn't like the standard kind of like 80s just pedal on one string riff, even though I did Livewire, which is kind of like that style of riff, but Mick just had really cool stuff, and I feel like he was very underrated as a songwriter and a riff writer. This is another personal favorite of mine, and another one that's featured in the course is Kee Marcello. Now, Kee had a huge impact on me as a player. For one, I loved how he was always, you know, not always, but a lot of times he was playing more major key solos, and his picking and his ability to speed up and slow down in the middle of a phrase was always so good. And Europe in general, I think, is pretty underrated. You obviously, I could have went with John Norum as well, the original guitarist from Europe. I went with Kee because the Kee stuff is what I was always really drawn to, the superstitious and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, just an amazing guitarist. He has really cool solo career stuff, as does John Norum. But, yeah, I just feel like Kee never got the attention he deserved, probably because Europe never got the attention that they deserved. Get some danger in here. Man, I mean, Andy Timmons is one of my modern day favorite guitarists, but I actually didn't really dive into his 80s catalog until much later in my playing life. When I found out he was in a band called Danger, I was like, oh really? And I'm not sure how much he played on the first Danger album. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But the next one, oof, and Crazy Nights, I mean, I love that. What an incredible solo. Listen, if you want to dive into some 80s Andy Timmons, listen to Crazy Nights from Danger, and that's the riff that I played. And just what an awesome solo. It's all major and happy. He's got crazy arpeggios. Andy will forever be one of the best. He's one of the best guitarists I've ever seen live, but he's just one of the best ever. He is phenomenal. All right, and another one who's always going to show up on these lists for me when it comes to 80s is Dann Huff. Now, you've probably listened to Dann Huff your entire life, and if you're not familiar with his catalog, go just look him up. Look at his credits of what he's played on. Dan was an incredible, top of the top session guitarist throughout the 80s. Now he's a huge producer here in Nashville, but he also had a band called Giant, where he really got to let loose on guitar, and you're just like, wow. He was leagues above so many of the other guys, and just incredible. He sings too, great singer, incredible guitarist. Dann Huff, gets a lot of credit for his session stuff and his producing credits, but man, Giant. If Giant would have been a few years earlier, they came out in the very early 90s, late 80s, and if they would have been a little bit earlier, I think they would have been a really big band. All right, Vito Bratta. You probably knew he was going to be on here. I wish we had more music of him to go off of, because the little bit that we have from White Lion is just incredible. It's so amazing. We can't help but ask, man, what else would he have come out with? But I don't think anybody even knows what happened to Vito, where he went. He just completely left the music scene altogether. So maybe one day he'll come back and grace us with some amazing music. But his melodic phrasing, his just instinctive playing, it was just a whole nother level, of the 80s stuff. He was one of those guys who I feel like there was Eddie, Van Halen, of course, and then you had Nuno and Vito really kind of carrying that Eddie torch in a different direction. So, man, I wish we would have gotten more from Vito. Doug Aldrich is definitely someone who I feel has never gotten the credit he deserves. Aside from the John Sykes Whitesnake stuff, his albums with Whitesnake are my absolute favorite stuff from the Whitesnake catalog. I think that his stuff in Lion, and then he was in Hurricane. The Hurricane album is one of my favorite 80s albums of all time. That I think was their second or maybe third album. It came out in the early 90s. But it was phenomenal guitar work. Doug has just the coolest riffs, the craziest solos. He's just the total package. And I just feel like he never really got the credit he deserved. So some of you might disagree on Doug, but I really feel like he's underrated. Okay, so Warren DeMartini is probably going to show up on every list I ever make about 80s guitarists, because he is just that good. If you've ever tried to learn a Warren solo, buckle up, because good luck trying to get his feel. He has one of the most unique, weird timing, phrases, all kinds of stuff in his playing. He is just incredible. Warren is one of the guys we talk about in the new course. I dive into some of his speed run stuff that he does and all that, but Warren will always be one of my favorite guitarists, and I feel like he never really got the attention that he deserved, even though he just sounds like Warren. No one really sounds like him. So he's incredible. Now, a lot of people probably know Richie Kotzen more from either the Winery Dogs or his solo career, where it's much more of this kind of R&B style singing with crazy fusion-y guitar, bluesy rock riffs. But if you go back to the 80s, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about Richie in the 80s, because I think he was only, I think when he did this, the Shrapnel stuff, he was like 19, 18. Listen to him, I'm like, wow. He was like on a whole nother, if you like straight up shred guitar, Richie Kotzen back in the 80s was on a whole nother level. I have one of those albums and I'm just like, dang, he's really just, just ripping the whole time. And I think that he definitely didn't get the credit he deserved in the 80s. Luckily he got to be in Poison for a little while, and then Mr. Big that probably helped him out a bunch being in both of those bands, but then his solo career is, done really well, and Winery Dogs. But go back to the 80s. As far as in the 80s era, I really feel like Richie was underrated. And probably still today, he's still a pretty, householdy name for a guitarist, but I think he's just incredibly talented. So more people should be talking about old Mr. Kotzen. Okay, and the final one here that I want to talk about is Reb Beach. Now, Reb was, of course, on a lot of magazines back in the day, but I feel like he got kind of the short end of the stick because, his band Winger ended up getting kind of mocked and ridiculed quite a bit, so he didn't really get the attention he deserved. But Reb is an incredible musician, just a amazing songwriter. Reb's a good singer, too. Also, his, a very unique way of playing. I feel like when I hear Reb play, I know it's him. Which is probably, a pretty difficult thing to do back then. And I also, had Reb's VHS, Cutting Loose, I think it was what it was called, VHS instructional, I started to say DVD, but as an instructional tape back in the day. And that was some of the most eye-opening stuff that Reb talked about, how he was talking about how you could play over different keys, different chords behind different scales give you different sounds. Like, I don't know, Reb was a very important guitarist for me, and I just feel like he deserves a ton of attention because he wrote amazing stuff, and he still is writing amazing stuff and doing, amazing work. So Reb Beach is my final pick, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think as well. So other than that, guys, I'm going to bounce on out of here. I hope you enjoy 80s Week. I've got a bunch of stuff planned for you. Guitar giveaway coming up here real soon. If you would, do me a huge favor, support the channel, check out my brand new course, Essential 80s Licks. It means the world to me. And I'll see you all with the next video. Keep it 80s, guys. Woo!